What's up, Exiles? Welcome to this build guide on Elemental Storm Sorceress. The focus of this video is playing Stormweaver during the progression journey from levels 1 to around mid-60 when we're approaching endgame. I've just spent my entire winter break making this journey myself, playing, testing, and tuning this build the entire way. So with this setup, I've been able to cruise through Act 1 through 3, and then do it again on Cruel completely solo without ever really getting stuck anywhere or having good gear. And that was with the unrefined version where I was constantly swapping and testing stuff. So my goal for this video is to take everything that I've learned from that journey and use it to equip you with the very best setups you can absolutely blast toward endgame and have the best time doing it. Now, this is my very first Path of Exile video. I do plan to make more if people like this one, and that would include a fully tuned endgame version of this build, so definitely let me know what you think of it and if you have any ideas. And if you see something that doesn't make sense, please mention that in the comments as well, so we can all learn together. Alright, so I've been really trying to figure out the format I want to use for these videos, and I think what's going to end up being the best is sort of like a live format where I'm kind of here driving with you guys as I'm talking, and I can sort of show you stuff on the fly, because there's just so much to go through that it's going to be really hard to find clips sort of describing what I'm talking about. And at the end of the video, guys, I'm going to do a snapshot where I'm going to show the whole setup. So I'll show, I'll mouse over all these, and then I will show you guys my whole skill tree and the pathing order. So if you want a snapshot summary of the whole setup or for reference later, you can just reference that timestamp at the end of the video and kind of see the whole setup in one place, okay? So this build at its core revolves around the spell Ember Fusillade. And this is a really cool spell, and it was a bit of a twist of fate that I started using this because at level 5, on this sorcerer, I did my very first gamble from the vendor guy, Finn, in Act 1, and I got this staff, or I guess at level, I think it was at level 5, and then I could use it at level 6. So I had a completely insane reason to use Ember Fusillade early, and that basically let me kind of realize the potential of the spell, and we ended up moving away from this staff around mid 30s, and a big part of that is due to spirit and kind of the power we can get out of spirit, because we end up transitioning to a scepter, and this is a pretty gangster scepter that I just got, and then I was able to get 2 rolls on the spirit increase. It's nothing crazy, it's just 2 pretty decent spirit rolls stacked, and then I upped the quality. But this baby is giving me 186 spirit, so we are rocking 323 spirit, and we are using 310 of it in this setup. And you can see if I go to my gems, we are using cast on minion death, we're using blasphemy, AoE curse, we're using arctic armor juiced with clarity and vitality, we're using raging spirits, and we're using now Archmage. So Archmage was basically the last piece I was waiting for to make this video. So I literally just got this yesterday when I was level 63, slotted it in, and this was kind of the last, this is the level 14 spirit gem, the last thing on the gem tiers if you're looking at them. So this is kind of the last piece of the puzzle for a fully unlocked build. And I was really waiting to kind of get this and see how it felt with this, and it feels really good. So that's basically what's given me the confidence to make this video, and we're gonna go through all the skills in detail and all the support gems and stuff we're rocking, but for now I basically want to show you guys kind of the premise of the build, what it feels like, how to play it, and just so you can kind of get an idea of what we're trying to do with it, and kind of the play style. So just coming out here to Jungle Ruins in Cruel, I basically want to show you guys why Ember Fusillade is so cool. So this is a really unique spell where when you press it, it summons a little ball of fire, and then that ball basically takes about a second or two. It's about 2 seconds to shoot. And what happens is if you cast another Fusillade within that 2 seconds, it's going to reset that timer before it shoots. So you can see if I wait about 2 seconds, I can basically, hold my Fusillades. And there's a maximum amount that's going to scale with the skill level. I'm at 8 right now, so I can have 8 of these projectiles. But you can see I can basically hold these indefinitely. And the other really cool thing about Fusillade is it's got a little animation cancel, where you can see if I hold it, we're going for big attack speed. So we can get to 8 super fast like this. So you can see if I hold it down, I slow down and it builds up to 8, right? We also have a 20% chance to summon 2 extra from our skill tree, and then we also, you saw right there, we have a 20% chance every cast from our Wild Shards gem, which we don't get this until fairly recently. Like, this is more of a as you're coming toward endgame. But this is going to make it so every 5th time you cast this, basically, it's going to just pull up all 8 at once with one cast instantly. So Wild Shards is going to give us the chance to just summon all 8 at once, like that. But basically, what we want to do with it, the really cool thing about it is we can sort of animation cancel that cast. So instead of doing this, you see I only would have had to do it once right there. So you want to basically watch for when they swirl like that, and that means you just got all 8 instantly. But for the whole time leveling up until you get the Wild Shard support gem on your Fusillade, you're just going to be, doing one at a time. And so you can get all of them quickly like that because we're building cast speed. But you can also do this animation cancel where we can literally cast Fusillade like completely on the move. And both cast speed and movement speed are going to make this feel better. So the faster you're moving and the faster your cast speed, which we're building very heavily into, you're going to be able to essentially build bullets on the move. And you can use this to essentially carry bullets into your next battle. So we can, like, you want to always have bullets preloaded like this for when you are running up on stuff, right? But also when you're kiting away now, we can use the same exact idea to basically have full mobility, like never get slowed down from casting, and constantly be on the move, just like dodging stuff and, continuing to like be shifty and stay mobile. And it just like feels really good compared to a lot of the other spells, like this Fire Blast one, for example, where it's like a really big, slow, long cast time, or even if you like hold Fusillade to get all 8 can be a little slow. But with this animation cancel, we can literally just carry him with us, and we can build him up while we're fully mobile and use the kind of the explosion then to like dumpster everything right after that, right? So that's basically the core of everything is Fusillade, and everything is basically working around Ember Fusillade, because basically what we can do is after we've got our 8 Fusillades, the other really important thing with Fusillade to remember is the more you have, they're going to do 5% more damage with an extra 2% on it from the quality if you bump it up to 20%. So basically, you're going to get 7% bonus damage per Fusillade that hits. So basically, you always want to try to cast it at the max. So it'll be 6 at first, then it'll be 7, then it'll be 8. So Embers deal 7% more damage for each previous Ember fired in the sequence. So basically, by the 8th Ember, we have 7 of those 7 percentages stacked underneath it, right? So a big, like 50% basically increase bonus damage on the last Ember. So it's always going to be advantageous to shoot like as many of these together at once as you can. But where I was going with that is you now have this window. You want to think of your casting basically in 2 phases. You have Ember Fusillade phase where you're getting your embers, and then you have this sort of 2-second phase where you need to wait before you cast it again so they can shoot, right? And so you're building your embers, and then you have this little window where you're waiting for them to shoot, and that's where you're casting everything else. So your spell rotation is literally Fusillade stacked up, and then in that window where they're shooting, you're casting all your other spells. And we got quite a bit of other stuff going on. But it's really not that complicated to play. So basically, the main things we are supporting Fusillade with are Flame Wall, Solar Orb, and Frostbomb. And so what we're trying to do basically is once we've accumulated our 8, the first thing we want to do is throw down a Firewall and let those Fusillades shoot through the wall. Because that's going to basically put extra burning damage on every single one of those projectiles from the Firewall. And it's also going to, if we take a look at Firewall here, it's not only going to put added fire damage on them, it's going to guarantee ignites. And so it's going to make every single one of your Fusillade bullets ignite combined with adding that extra fire damage as they pass through the wall, right? So kind of the simplest version of it is build your embers, throw down a wall, let your stuff shoot through the wall, and you're going to get just huge damage off of these like fire bullets crossing through that and getting that guaranteed ignite stuff, right? What you saw me do that right there is Lightning Warp, which is something we'll get to in a minute, a little more like complementary. So after we have the Fusillade Flame Wall idea down, basically what we're trying to do is create like a gauntlet of zone control. And you can see, basically I want to like do this combo of frost bombing and solar orbing to like create like a literal like elemental gauntlet for the mobs I'm engaging with. So I'm like rolling up on a pack. I have my Fusillades charged like this. I throw my firewall down. I ice bomb and I like orb. And now we just have this crazy storm gauntlet going on where like nothing's going to be able to really come into it without dying. And then we're sort of kiting around that storm, right? So the core and like what you want to start with is flame wall fusillade like this, where you're shooting your fusillades through the flame wall. Then you're creating the gauntlet within the flame wall area with your frozen orb and your solar orb. So the frost bomb and the solar orb. So the frost bomb is like your main method to freeze, and we're doing this really nice triple stack of support gems in it. Glaciation, spell echo, and spell cascade, where you can see when I do one frost bomb, it cascades it and then it echoes. So we get not only a duplication of the spell, they also reverberate when they pop multiple times. So it's like the cascade combined with the reverberation, and it also has the extra freeze buildup from glaciation. So this is like our primary kind of freeze method, and we want to be constantly mixing that in, like basically on cooldown. So every 3.5 seconds we're trying to drop a frost bomb and like play around it, and that's because we are like fully built into this elemental ring, which we're going for very early. And so we're going to get just a crazy amount of elemental damage from this. This is literally 70% elemental damage on the border, and then 90% when you have all three of these activated, which we do basically constantly in this build. And so this triangle, which we can push to fairly early here, is going to give us literal, what did I say, 70 plus 90. So 160% elemental damage here. Massive power in this cluster right here for this build. Okay, so we're fusillading, we're walling, and then we're creating our gauntlet with our two abilities. So here's a good like boss fight example. And you can see my mana like looks low, and that's only because I have Archmage on. And I just got Archmage, and we have like a little bit of mana problems right now, but they're basically almost already solved because I've been preparing for this moment. And so like and the reason that is because look, Archmage is pulling from my Elemental Storm. So if my Elemental Storm is proccing, it's actually pulling that extra 50% lightning damage from Archmage. And so you can see when something's like getting hit by my abilities, like my Storm right there, it's actually going to be pulling mana from my pool. But this is like right at level 64, right when we got Archmage, and we still have enough mana to basically Fusillade all the time. And so we're going to have plenty of juice in the tank, like as we progress further into endgame. And you can super easily, like before we were running Archmage, literally last level, we have 0 mana issues. So you can see if I go just to my skills and turn Archmage off, which is this super juiced, literally what it's doing, it's giving us 5% extra damage as lightning for every 100 max mana we have, which is literal 50% right now at 1,000 max mana, and it's only going to scale up from here. The cost, though, is that those spells cost a percentage of your max mana. So basically what we're going to try to do is build a big enough max mana pool to constantly scale this damage up. We're also going to do some really cool things in our ascendancy tree, such as Force of Will, once we get points 5, 6, and 7, 8. Getting Arcane Surge, which is going to give us cast speed and mana regen, which then permanently scales its effect every max mana we have, is essentially going to completely solve our mana issues, combined with sort of the regen focus we have throughout the rest of our passives here. But basically, you can see if I take off Archmage, I have literal zero mana issues, like not even close, bro. Like, I will never, ever have to mana pot. So this is going to be like how your mana is like throughout the whole journey, basically. And then once you get Archmage, it's going to be a little tighter. But basically, for most of this time, like, I haven't really had to use my mana flask for like most of the leveling journey, because we can sort of build enough mana regen along the way to make it like not matter, right? And the reason we're doing that is we're preparing to take Archmage, which is going to be a huge amount of mana consumption. And it's really exciting that right when I get Archmage at level 64, we still have enough to make it work. So it's literally only going to get better from here. And my theory is it's going to be essentially 100% solved once we're able to unlock Force of Will, especially with the way we're scaling our mana. We're literally going to get increased mana regen for every 15 max mana we have. So, and also on top of that, if you think about it, the more max mana you have, the more value your regen has. So like, let's say I have 50% increased mana regen, right? If I have 1,000 max mana, that 50% is going to give me half of what it would give me if I had 2,000 mana. Because if my mana doubles, goes from 1,000 to 2,000, that 50% is still 50%. It's just scaling to the bigger bubble. So now it's replenishing 50% of my 2,000 pool, 50% more of my 2,000 pool, rather than 50% more of my 1,000 pool. So scaling max mana sort of has like double synergy, it seems like, with mana regen. And that's basically how at level 64, you know, without crazy gear or anything, we're able to, you know, pull in Archmage, turn that baby on, and get this crazy damage increase, while still, you know, basically having the mana for it. And finally, for the first time with this on, I have to mana flask, which actually feels kind of good. But this basically makes it so everything's just going to get one-tapped, basically. Like, if something eats a full Fusillade, it's dying. And yeah, you're literally just like, you know, kind of creating this gauntlet and just like roasting everything. So we've covered kind of the first part of it. And the big thing that I want to mention here that we haven't really talked about yet is kind of the core ascendancy that we're going for. And that is this elemental storm thing here. So basically what this is, creates a stationary fire, cold, or lightning storm at the target duration when you crit. So basically, anytime you crit with an elemental spell, you're going to summon this storm, and it's going to be, the storm element is going to be based on the highest damage of the crit that's happened there. So they spawn automatically off of crits. They're about 2 meters wide. They last 5 seconds. Enemies inside the storm are hindered, which is a 30% slow. We're also snagging this node to do increased damage against hindered enemies. So on top of our chilled ground, we have an additional slow through hinder that's sort of independent and automatically happening with Elemental Storm. But basically, we are summoning a buttload of these. The whole intent, you can see we're picking up some crit along the way as well. Here, we're going to eventually get this one, but we got this crit here, we got this crit here. But if we look at my Fusillade right now, it's at almost 16% crit chance. And so we're looking to continue to scale that because every time we crit, we're getting an Elemental Storm. And this Rain Dancer, taking it all the way, gives us, makes those storms, the internal cooldown, like much faster, so we can proc much faster. And then on top of that, we are complementing that with some support gems where we're giving it 30% increased CDR through a gem. So it has really good, it has 180% CDR with these two things combined. And then we're also making it blind, so it hinders, slows, blinds, which reduces enemy accuracy, so it makes it harder for them to hit you. And I've also been recently experimenting with Elemental Discharge on this, and it seems like it works and basically continuously procs off of your int for like big damage increases on that storm. I got to test this a little bit more, but right now my storm is absolutely pumping with these three of something standing in it. Okay, so we have Fusillade, we have Flame Wall, then we create the Gauntlet with Frozen Orb and Solar Orb. Now, kind of the final big thing we're doing is our Execution, which is Lightning Orb. So this is our main way to get Shock, because we're not rocking a ton of lightning spells. Well, now we're getting Shock through our Archmage, but before Archmage, we weren't getting a ton of Shock value. So basically what we can do is by running Lightning Orb, you can see when I do it, see how there's this shocked ground, and now everything that's in there is shocked. So all we need to do to proc our like shocked elemental node and get everything taking that extra damage from shocked is just get one execute. And you'll notice like a lot of times we're doing this really cool unleash thing. So this is gonna hit multiple times when you do it. And also we're gonna vamp energy shield with it. and it's going to make permanent shock. This is a recent one, Stormfire, a level 3 support, but it's going to make it so shocks do not expire if they're ignited, which we're igniting everything right away. So we're basically going to get permanent shock from Lightning Warp. It's going to give us energy shield, but then it's also going to reverberate when we cast it. And so trying to do it without killing something. So you can see when I do it, it's kind of hard to see, but it'll unleash itself. It'll do like a 3 cast once it's built up its seals. You see that, the 2 on the tooltip right here? Those are basically the seals from that support gem. And when I do it, it'll like, when those seals are built, it'll like reverberate and like hit an extra time. And you can often like kind of chain it together where if you get something low, you can do that and just kind of like domino, execute, delete everything. And I would say that's going to be like your steepest mana cost. Look at our mana here. This spamming it, like especially if you're missing the execute, look at my mana. So one of the biggest things for your mana to keep in mind is not missing your Lightning Warp. Like you don't want to spam it when stuff's not in execute range because you can press it still and go really fast. So what you want to do with it is basically wait for something's in melee range. The only time you want to spam it, or wait till someone's in executing range, the only time you want to spam it is when you think you're going to get like that domino effect going, where you can like chain together and just blast multiple enemies. So kind of bring it all together. We're fusillading, then we're in the break from fusillading. We are doing our all of our other stuff. So we build our fusillades, then we flame wall, frost bomb, solar orb, then we fusillade again, and then we can like do all that stuff again. Or after that next fusillade, we can dodge. Like you want to constantly, as soon as your fusillades shoot out, you want to build them back up, and you want to use this 2-second window to do everything else. So we fusillade and we dodge here. We fusillade. We have enough time to basically do this: 1 bomb, 1 solar orb, and 1 wall before we fusillade again. So kind of your core rotation that you want to stick to is fusillading, flame wall, frost bomb, solar orb. Play through this gauntlet as you fusillade again, and then on like the next round of fusillades, do the same exact thing: wall, orb, solar orb, right? Wall, frost bomb, solar orb. Play around this gauntlet. You're going to get a bunch of those elemental storms spawning here, and it's going to feel really good. And there's a couple more things that I have on my bar here that I've been testing that I'm not fully committed to yet. And you can see in my gear, I'm running double unset rings, like literally the only 2 I have. The first 2 I've gotten. You can see like this one has non-stats for my build. Like the only thing it's doing is the lightning resist basically and the additional spell slot. But basically I was running 2 additional spell slots through these rings so I could try some stuff. I was trying to see if Flame Blast felt good with Solar Orb like this, because we can cast it off Solar Orb. And I was also thinking, we fusillade, we do our combo here. On this next fusillade, while all that stuff's up, we have this little gap where we could charge up, this Flame Blast, like as our next round of fusillades are going off. But in reality, like the cast is so slow, like I get stunned out of it like so often. And it's kind of like opposite, like my whole, the whole point of this build is being super mobile and like having to never stop moving. And when we try to cast Flame Blast, it really slows us down and kind of like makes us vulnerable. So like TBD on if this one's going to like, make it into the final version, or, how good this is necessarily is. But it does have good synergy with Solar Orb, and it does kind of fit sometimes in the spell rotation, but it's like a little risky to cast. So this one is unnecessary and a little experimental. Don't consider, Flame Blast like something you need to make this build work. It's certainly not, and I might end up getting rid of it completely. We also have Volatile Dead from our wand, which I don't use hardly at all, but I could if I wanted. I would say of the wands, this is probably your best option, because you're going to get these little fireballs, which is going to synergize with all your elemental stuff. However, I think any wand that is good, you don't need the top effect on the wand. What you need is good stats. So you're looking for extra % elemental damage, either lightning, cold, or fire, and then you're looking for spell skill ranks. Those are like the 2 big things you're looking for on a wand. And like my gear could certainly use an upgrade. My scepter is probably my best piece of gear here. But you can see I'm rocking this for the stats, the strength and dex that I needed to get my gems to work. And then I'm rocking both of these literally just for the additional spell slots. This has nice cast speed on it, so that's cool. But then basically some extra spirit on chest along with energy shield that I did recently. I didn't used to have the spirit on chest, so that's like a new addition. And that's basically given us enough to run the Archmage with everything else we're doing. And then, you know, it's basically just, this is the only thing I have evasion on. I've been experimenting with if I want to try to go any amount of evasion or just go full-blown energy shield. It's looking like it's probably going to be full-blown energy shield at this point. And now we just got a belt slot with an extra charm slot. And then the most important thing on boots is going to be move speed. So you really want to, the move speed is really going to help this feeling. Like cast speed combined with move speed is what's going to let you essentially Fusillade on the move. And that's just going to like feel really good a lot of the time. The sort of stuff we haven't talked about yet is going to be Arctic Armor. And this is just basically a buff to help us get more freezes. It's going to freeze stuff around us when it hits us. It's also going to have a knockback built in, and it's going to hold our clarity and our vitality gems. So this is another 30 spirit between these two support gems, but this is just going to basically give us, this one's unnecessary, but clarity is the most important one. So you can sacrifice vitality if you don't have the 20 spirit, but you want to try to run clarity when you can, especially as you get a little bit, I didn't have this in at first, but as you get higher level, especially when you have Archmage, you really want to have it in. Arctic Armor is like our basic kind of like melee protection, and it's going to give us some nice zone control from Bludgeon combined with it freezing. Right? And then we have Blasphemy as well, and Blasphemy is our consistent AoE fire vulnerability curse. And so I was getting really tired of casting this. It just like really felt in the way. And since we're doing the spirit stack, I figured why not try to just run our curse in an aura. And it actually works pretty well. And I was also experimenting. I was doing this last level. I went all the way up to Whispers of Doom here. I was right here. I went up this way and got this. And that's going to let you socket in another curse. It'll cost another 60 spirit. But before I was running Archmage, like if I turn Archmage off down here, which is 100 spirit. So this is like the level 14 support gem, like final kind of support spell. You can get 100 spirit, huge mana cost, kind of like the end game buff here. But basically before that, or if we have enough spirit after that, we can throw in another curse. This temporal chains with flammability actually feels really good. This is what I was testing last level, because this like slows everything around you and then extends the duration of everything else on them, which is really cool because it includes like all your elemental ailments, which you're doing basically like all of. But then we could also do this, same way we have flammability here, we could do this as lightning vulnerability, which is going to pair really good with Archmage Lightning now, right? Or we could do it with Frost vulnerability if we wanted. So basically we're going to be scaling up to, like, even with Archmage on, I'm at 13 spirit. Once I'm able to build 50 more spirit, I'm going to also be working toward this part of the skill tree up here and be getting Whispers of Doom. So like in the endgame version, we are going to have 2, if not eventually 3 curses slotted into Blasphemy. And this is going to give us just like really easy kind of like free increased damage from automatically applying our elemental vulnerability to everything, and then we can run this other one as kind of a support gem with it. And what you can do actually is once you have enough spirit to slot in Blasphemy, you can carry this one with you and use it situationally. So you can use your flammability for extra fire damage, but then you can situationally just swap it real quick if you need more survivability. So this one's gonna extend all your elemental durations, like all your ailments, but it's also gonna slow everything nearby you. So it's gonna make it easier to fight, and the flammability is gonna give you more damage. And eventually we're gonna be able to run both. But for right now and like leveling up when you first get it, you can basically hot swap them based on what you're looking for, right? Okay, and then the final big piece of the puzzle, like the last spell we haven't really talked about, is Cast on Minion Death. And this is the one that like really kind of brought the build together for me as I was like finishing, you know, Act 3 and like coming into Cruel. This one kind of like really unlocked the potential of it. And it's the metagem Cast on Minion Death. And there's some really cool magic here happening with Raging Spirits. So I guess Raging Spirits is the other one that I forgot to talk about, but Raging Spirits has wild synergy with Ember Fusillade because every Fusillade bullet that hits anything is going to make a skull. So you're constantly going to have a huge amount of these skulls out. And then what we can do is what you just saw right there. We can automatically blow all of them up. They're going to ignite okay, it's actually so sick, man. I'm so like excited about this synergy. So with Raging Spirits, what we can do is we can make it so this Infernal Legion is the key. So minions from supported skill, this is a level 2 support gem, take 20% of their max life as fire damage per second. Minions from supported skill ignite enemies within a radius, dealing fire damage equal to 20% of the minion's max life. So basically every second, your minion's going to burn for a fifth of their health. So after 5 seconds, they're going to die. Then we have this in here, so we make it so when minions do die, they deal 50% of their max life as fire damage to surrounding enemies. So when they do die, they explode, and then because this one does damage, ignite damage based off of max health, we then scale their max health with Meat Shield. So we have beefy skull minions, but they're all dying in 5 seconds because as soon as they get spawned, they're burning from Infernal Legion. They're igniting everything around them. Then they explode for fire damage. But every time they explode, they give energy to cast on minion death. And we have 2 giant spells slotted in here, Comet and Firestorm. But we're getting so much energy from the amount of skulls we're spawning and how much they're exploding. Like when we're in combat, like look at this energy. We're getting, like you can see when I'm actually fighting, I'm basically getting a free Comet and a free Firestorm like per pack that I'm like going through. It's like really satisfying the sort of amount of energy we can generate off of these skulls exploding versus like everything else I've tried. Like I've tried the cast on Ignite, cast on Freeze, cast on Shock. They feel awful. This one feels insane because we are getting so many minion deaths, like literal every Ember Fusillade full one is 8 minion deaths. And like we don't have anything built into meta energy, you know? Like there's no bonus here. I don't have any of these nodes up here. We're just gonna get constant procs of 2 of our literal biggest spells, a huge damage freezing meteor combined with a ignite consuming like a huge AoE firestorm. And that's going to become, these are both huge cast times. Both of these are going to be coming in automatically from cast on minion death all the freaking time. And it's like super satisfying, right? All right, and then the very last couple skills we haven't really touched on here. We talked about Volatile Dead for a sec. I don't really end up using this one, but you could. I think it is the best wand option, but again, I don't think the top thing on the wand really matters. You really want to look for the extra elemental damage and the spell ranks. The other thing we do want to go for is Malice on our Scepter. So you really want to try to get a Scepter with Malice because this is going to lean into the critical strikes we need in order to proc our Elemental Storm. Remember, our Storm only procs off of critical hits, so the more crits we have, the more storms are coming through. And with Malice, we sort of auto-generate more crits because it's giving everything around us critical weakness. So it's giving them a debuff to let us crit them more from this critical weakness thing. And it basically will stack up to 10% additional crit chance. And then we also just have this skill effect duration thing thrown in here as well to support Malice. And then these are, in Volatile Dead, these are just extra gems that I'm going to eventually slot into these other ones at 4 sockets, but I just like have them here as a placeholder to buff it a little bit for now. But I think these 2 have potential in this build for support gems. I just haven't had a spot for them yet to socket them in. But what you can do for your weapon swap for your offhand is have a staff. So you either want to run this Dusk Vigil staff, which you can see I got lucky enough and got an upgraded version when I got to Accrual, but my spirit setup was better by that point anyway, so I didn't end up really swapping back. But I was doing this where I was rocking it as an offhand, and that's basically going to let you... Oh, I have this set. Hold on. You can basically... remember, you can set your spells so like they change. So I have this one to always cast on 2, so if I change it back... now when we cast Fusillade, it generates an extra one from the staff. Like that's the Dusk Vigil's effect, is generate a Fusillade every time you cast a spell. So I was running this as an offhand. Basically, this is like trading away all your spirit buffs for a bunch more Fusillades, like 12 Fusillades. But it's like if you're kind of like farming stuff and just looking to pump damage with your Fusillades, or like earlier on before you have all the spirit stuff set up, this weapon can be a really good option for this build, and feels pretty good. But what you can do, like end game, like once you kind of outgrow this thing, for an offhand to actually support your main hand, is run literal. Oh, whoops. Run any staff with Sigil of Power, and basically what that's gonna do is give you the ability to weapon swap, which is why I had. So if you go to all your spells and you set them to like, so like you see I have my wand and my scepter on weapon set 2. What you can do is like set any spell you want to only use your wand like this. So now anytime I use Fusillade, it's going to auto swap to my wand. So you can see I have all my spells that are castable set this way. I have Solar Orb set this way. I have Flame Wall set this way. And you can also set which spirit buffs you want based on the amount of spirit you get when you staff swap. But the only reason we're staff swapping is to swap right back. So what we're going to do is we're going to pretend like we are always using our wand still, but if we have a minute to set up, or like a couple extra seconds, we can throw down a Sigil of Power, and then if we cast anything, it's going to instant swap back to our wand scepter, would give us all our buffs back. So, and the sigil lasts 10 seconds. So this is just like a really good, especially like it seems like a lot of Sorc builds like don't have a great reason to weapon swap. This is a good reason to weapon swap, because you can use the Sigil of Power from a staff with your main hand wand scepter setup and still get the bonus of the Sigil of Power, which is literal just extra juice, extra spell damage. If we look at the tooltip here, gain a stage when you spend a total of 50% of your max mana while in the area. Max 4 stages. Buff grants 13 more spell damage per stage. And so we can basically just like, you know, as we're casting in this sigil, we're going to passively build increased spell damage, which is really cool. And then the other thing we can do that I just like started experimenting with recently that you would maybe want to do like earlier on, that's really cool. Sorry, I just changed my bind, so I'm trying to like, I keep trying to do stuff while I'm doing other stuff. So the last kind of tool we have at our disposal that is going to be really good to use before you get Archmage is Mana Tempest. And this is like basically like a temporary thing you can do up until you get Archmage. And what this is it just creates a storm. Think of it like Archmage, where as long as you're in the storm, your abilities are going to eat more mana, but they're going to do added lightning damage. And so like before we get Archmage, we can basically use Mana Storm in the same way, where once we have our Fusillades up, we can throw it down and get like bonus lightning damage out of all of our spells while we're casting in there for the extra mana cost. So I think, especially because you're not going to get Flame Blast till later, and I was mentioning it's maybe not even one we're going to run permanently, I think Mana Tempest is like a more, you know, kind of like stable look or solid look, especially as you're leveling up, to give you like that really juicy kind of bonus damage on your Fusillades like automatically, because you can throw down the Tempest like you saw me do there after you've already built the Fusillade charges up, right? So you can literally like cast the Fusillades before you use the extra mana consumption, then you can storm, and they're still going to get the bonus, I think. I'm pretty sure. All right, so now that hopefully you sort of like understand the idea behind all the spells, now we're going to put it all together, and I'm going to just like show you some like live combat full speed here. This is basically like where I'm at in Act 3. We're in Jakani's Sanctum, which is monster level 60. I'm level 64 currently, and I showed you guys my gear, but here's kind of what I'm working with. Nothing crazy. My scepter's probably my best piece. But, you know, these rings are kind of non-stats. The cast speed's good, but mostly for the additional skill slots. And then basically just energy shield, decent energy shield stuff everywhere else with some move speed on boots. That's kind of the most important thing on our boots there. And then new flask we just upgraded, rarity charm with a stun. I think stun charm's the one you want to run most of the time. I'll carry if freeze is like the most annoying thing besides stun to me, so I literally carry a freeze charm with me. But yeah, you kind of want to run, I usually am running stun charm, and then when I got this second charm slot, I slotted in this one for the rarity boost, and then the offhand staff just for the Sigil of Power, right? So let's do it. So like we were talking about, we're doing our Fusillade animation cancel. You see when a Wild Shards procs comes through and we get all 8 instantly like that, we just don't have to cast it anymore. But basically, we're throwing down our zone control and just nuking stuff. And we got big mana consumption happening with Archmage. So I'll show you guys, like, I'll do another example, like when I'll like turn Archmage off, so you can kind of see the difference in the damage and the mana that it's giving us at this point. Because we've been playing this build this entire time, like literally without Archmage. But now that we do have it, the extra damage is just feeling so juicy that yeah, it's gonna be hard to get rid of at this point. But you can see we now have like a bit of mana problems, but this is the very beginning of us getting Archmage, and so our mana is only going to scale up from here. So if we can handle it here, we're definitely going to be able to handle it like later on, and that was why I was literally waiting to make this video to make sure Archmage was going to work the way I was thinking it would, and it does. And so that's why we're making the video, and I basically feel like with that in play, it's sort of like good enough to share. And like you can see, we kind of just like dumpster. Like I'm like not even paying attention really, and we're just kind of like saucing everything. But kind of like back to the rotation here, what we're doing is we're building our Fusillades up. You always want to pre-charge them like this while you're on the move. When you see stuff, you throw your wall down, you throw your bomb down, you throw your orb down. So that's the core rotation, right? I'm building up my Fusillades, and once I have them build up, when I engage enemies, I wall, I bomb, and I orb. And everything dies. And as soon as you do that orb, you start charging your second round of Fusillades, right? And you kind of like rinse and repeat that cycle. And then the other thing you want to do is look for your executes. And a lot of times you're like, we're killing stuff too fast to be able to execute. But the ideal, and especially like before you get Archmage and is doing all this crazy damage, is you want to try to execute like as soon as you can, like early on in a fight, because that's going to give you the added damage from this combined with creating shocked ground, which makes everything take additional damage from being shocked that's in that shocked ground. And so an early execute, I keep missing it, but basically you can like charge your Fusillades and then you can like kind of spam it if you're really trying to like lock it in, and you can like a lot of times get it. I'm literally killing stuff too fast. But here, like, this is a good, let's turn off Archmage and see the difference, both in our mana and in our damage, okay? But this will probably give you, like, a little bit of a clearer picture of, this is, like, more of what it's going to look like on the way up. It's not going to be quite so instant delete-y, but it is going to still deliver, like, pretty big dick damage most of the time. And, like I was mentioning earlier, the Mana Tempest and the Flame Blast are kind of, you can rotate them, and they're sort of like situational, and I'm not necessarily attached to either of them, but what you can do with Mana Tempest, so we turned off Archmage, right? What you can do with Mana Tempest is use it in the same way, where, not like that, not like that. So pretty much like, yeah, the main times I die are when I'm not paying attention and I don't let my barrier recharge. So we have a ton of barrier nodes, so we have a half of the energy shield. See, we have 100% increase on the delay, so instead of 4 seconds before it starts recharging, it's 2 seconds, and then we have it's regenning 210 shield per second. So we have between all of our nodes, we have big shield recharge, we have big shield value, and we have big shield recharge happening kind of like across the board here. But that kind of stuff, I tried pulling those nodes out, guys. It makes a big difference. So I do recommend investing in those defensive nodes. And if you're feeling spicy, if you're feeling confident, you can try to pull them and like use them for other stuff. But I will say those using the nodes that make it recharge faster and recharge sooner actually end up feeling like pretty good. So this is basically the build without Archmage. So you can see my mana is like way better. But what we can do in this instance is use the Mana Tempest, which I just did there. See how there's this Storm Cloud now? So now this is basically doing what Archmage does automatically. It's adding like a lesser version. It's adding lightning damage to all my attacks, and it's costing more mana the longer I stand in it. So I think like for most of the time you're playing this build, you want to kind of use Mana Storm in the same way you would use Archmage, and kind of with the idea that you're building toward Archmage in the end, right? But, you know, Mana Storm this is not something I was doing the whole way. It's something I kind of, you know, found out recently and started experimenting with. But you can pre-charge your Fusillades, then Mana Storm, and they'll shoot out, and you see them doing extra lightning damage, even though I kind of pre-casted them before I stormed, right? So you can get the added lightning damage without costing the extra mana if you pre-cast your Fusillades and then storm on top of it, right? And you can see I'm not really even using Volatile Dead, and I'm not using my Sigil of Power that often, but if there is a situation where I'm like posted up and I really want to pump, I can Sigil of Power, and because I have all my other spells set to only be used with my wand, like anything I cast will auto swap me back. So if you're going to do the Sigil of Power weapon swap setup, what you want to do is just go to any spell you're casting. So you can change all these based on how much spirit you have, like whether you want it to be on with the staff or not, right? All your passive buffs. You're going to lose out on most of these. The most important ones to keep with your staff, if you can, are going to be Raging Spirits and the Minion Cast on Death, because that's what's going to give you the auto-exploding heads to give you the extra spells to come through from your metagem here, right? But basically on everything you're casting, you want to just make sure that this used with weapon set is on your wand. So see how my wand scepter is on 2? You want to make sure 2 is checked and the other one's not. And basically what that's going to do is it's going to make it so any ability you try to cast besides your Sigil of Power is going to auto swap to your wand. So that lets you, without pressing your weapon swap button, it lets you press your Sigil of Power and then just instantly be casting everything else again without worrying if you successfully weapon swap back or if you have all your buffs back or everything, right? It's just going to automatically pull your wand back out for everything you do. And the only time you have your staff out is when you press the scepter, and then your wand's instantly right back up, right? Or when you press the sigil. I'll need a larger soul core for this. But yeah, hopefully you guys kind of get an idea of how it's looking here. And this is Archmage off here, right? So we can see mana's good, but we're still pumping big damn. But Archmage, like, really is what makes it go turbo. And so this is kind of, like I was saying, this is what I've been building toward. And this is kind of going to be the beginning of the final form here. And so I will be making a, especially if people like this video and I have the time, I will be making an endgame version video of this build where I kind of showcase what the final form looks like once I'm deeper into endgame, like running maps and stuff, right? But for right now, I basically, the build is fun enough and it felt like cool enough that I really wanted to show you guys like what I had so far so that people could start playing it and like leveling with it. And then I think we're kind of set up to have a really strong start in endgame with how powerful I'm feeling right now. And so we're going to kind of take that, continue to fine tune it, and make like the ultimate endgame version and see how high we can push maps and stuff. So I'm going to try to get to the boss. I'm going to like just farm here and get to the boss so I can show you guys like a boss fight live. All right, so we cleared it out. Let's take a look at a boss fight here. Boss fights are usually like they're not too bad. You want to dodge the big mechanic. So usually what happens when I do boss fights is I die once to the big mechanic that I forgot about, and then the second time I kill. But we're getting like so much kind of damage through with this build that like especially now that we have Archmage, we're gonna end up skipping actually a lot of phases that we can see. When he's stuck in my Elemental Storm, they chunk for so much damage, but they also eat my mana. See how my mana's like capped out low? That's because basically when my storms auto proc on him from my crits, they're constantly like eating my mana, but it's worth because it's doing fatty damage. Like look at his health just roasting away, right? And we're literally just kind of dodging back and forth between him. And the way you want to play this is anytime your energy shield gets low, like if we weren't doing so much damage, anytime your energy shield gets low, you can do that. But then we can also execute when he's in any boss in 5%. We can execute with our lightning work, which is also really useful. Let's go. Legendary baby. Oh, I think that's that. Which one? I might have this one. It is indeed the Dark Defiler. All right, so I'm gonna just go through the skills with all the gems here, guys, so you guys like kind of know for sure what's happening. Don't mind these are just extra here. So And you can put them in Volatile Dead if you want, but these are probably going to be 4th support gems for once I get a 4th slot unlocked for a lot of these. So basically, we have Sigil of Power coming from our offhand staff from the weapon swap, like we talked about. We have Volatile Dead coming from our wand, but could be anything. I think the best option probably is Volatile Dead, because you can spawn fireballs off of corpses, but unless you're like which doesn't happen very often and has only started happening with Archmage on, then you might end up using it, so it might be good to have now. But not necessarily. What you're really looking for is the spell ranks and percentage of extra damage is what you're looking for on weapon, right? And we'll talk through gear in a second here. So then you're going to go Malice with just this persistent to give more time on it. And I would say the spirit is more important than the Malice. So trying to find one with big spirit rolls. This one already had a spirit roll on it. That was T2, and then I did an Exalted Orb and got another independent Tier 3 Spirit roll. So that's why it has 55% Spirit. And then with the quality increase, that brings it up to 186 Spirit from 100. And so we're literally like more than doubling our Spirit just off of this Scepter. Makes it really strong. For Elemental Storm, which is our Ascendancy thing that we're getting here, right? So once you have your first 2 ascendancy points, you can get Elemental Storm, and that is going to give this skill right here in your skill tree, and now you can socket it, right? So the most important socket here is going to be, and in general, I have these ordered by like how I was, or like when I socketed them in, but I think like the order for this one would be, you want the cooldown reduction first, and then the chance to blind, and then this one, it seems like this is giving me a lot more damage, and I'm not 100% sure if this is working or not, so I need a little more experimentation with this one. But if it is working, basically this is going to be consuming all of our ailments to proc a bunch of extra damage because of how often it's hitting. We're going to be getting this discharge like constantly, so that's the sort of idea of running it here. And it seems like it's working, but it needs a little further testing. So those are kind of like our passives that we didn't slot in that are like always on, right? And then the first spell that we want to do, like our most important spell, is Ember Fusillade. If you have any quality gems, like you want to basically this to always be your first like highest level gem, the first one you level up. You want it to be the first one you dump quality into, because the quality is going to give you 2 more extra % on the damage bonus from the firing in sequence, which ends up being like really good. And so we are socketing Fusillade with Arcane Tempo really early on for that bonus cast speed. Then we're going to do Mana Flare, which is actually like a really cool one that because of how focused we are on critical hits, this is going to eat mana to make it do more damage when it crits, and it's fire damage too, so it scales really well with Fusillade. And if you think about Fusillade, every time we cast it, we're getting 8 chances at a crit instead of 1. So with the crit chance being 16%, we have 8 rolls in a row because it shoots 8 times instead of just once, right? So we have 8 chances to crit and proc Mana Flare instead of just 1, right? Because of the way it's casting 8 projectiles at once, basically. And then Wild Shards is basically to support that idea, where now with Wild Shards, like 1 out of every 5 times we cast it in combat, it's going to give us all 8 of them instantly at once with 1 cast. So once this is like a support gem level 3, you're not going to socket this until later. But once you do eventually get Wild Shards, you want to be paying attention to your Ember Fusillade. When you see it all proc at once, you want to just stop casting it right there instead of holding it down in your normal pattern to get all of them. As soon as you get 1 Wild Shards proc, you're going to have all 8. So you want to let it go, cast your other spells so that those Fusillades can release, and then do it again, right? Okay, so then the second most important spell we have is Flame Wall. And Flame Wall is just going to directly compensate or directly like enable Fusillade, because it's going to make, we're always trying to shoot our Fusillades through our firewall. It's going to give us them bonus fire damage and guarantee ignite off them. And the firewall is going to ignite itself, right? And so we're socketing this guy with Fortress to give it that circular effect and make it easier to shoot through and create our little gauntlet with our orbs, right? We got a lot of circles going on with this build. And then Arcane Surge, this one's temporary until we unlock Arcane Surge here with our 6th Transcendence point. And then Magnified Effect. So this would be swapped like this. Magnified Effect would give it bigger, probably more like this. Would give it more area effects. So you'd want to do this one, and then this one, and then this one. So then the next most important spell is going to be Raging Spirits, and this is like our first spirit buff you want to get right away with your first 30 spirit in Act 1. And this is what's going to give us the skulls. And the magic here is the fact that they blow themselves up and proc this meta cast on minion death gem. And so this isn't, it's not going to work like that at first. And you don't need it to really until you get this at level 52 is when you can use this. Or it's sooner than that. This is level 13, but I think level 10. So I think it's like 40 something. You can use this. But basically, you want to Raging Spirits is the most important ones, or like the order is going to be this one. So this is Infernal Legion. This is the one that makes them all ignite, and they burn for their health, and then when they die, this one makes them blow up. This one makes them ignite on the way down. This one makes them blow up and fire damage when they die. Both of these two together, this one being the main one, is what's gonna make them go turbo to do the cast on minion death. And then once you have those ones in, you can support it with Meat Shield, because you're not really getting much damage from the skulls attacking themselves. So what you want to do is take the damage away from their little auto attacks, give them 50% more max life, because Infernal Legion scales off of your minions' max life. So now they're going to burn for more because they have more max life to combust with from this support gem, right? And then same thing here, minion instability, they're going to blow up now for 15% of their max life. So the bigger their max life, the more these two gems are going to scale. So we're basically using Meat Shield to scale both these effects, but these three together are what's going to give Raging Spirits the constant ignition and the constant exploding themselves, which is going to proc our cast on minion death. And we'll just talk about that one right here. You're not going to get this one till you're like coming up on Cruel, and you get the enough spirit to be able to run it. But basically, we're running cast on minion death with Comet and Firestorm. And I've tried each of these independently. If you want more Comets, just run Comet. If you want more Firestorms, just run Firestorm. You can get them to be close to like constant if you just run one. But I really like both together because we can still proc them very quickly. Because of how much energy we're generating from our exploding skulls, and these two coming down together, it happens about like once a pack. When I'm like mobbing through stuff, it ends up happening like kind of like once per group. I'll get a big one of these to come through, and that is like feels really good because I'll get this instant huge damage crushing freeze. Simultaneously, I'll get this persistent, like, so this happens instantly and then it's over, but then it freezes, right? Then that's followed up with this persistent screen wide firestorm that's eating your ignites to give these giant improved bolts that have way more damage when they eat and ignite, and literally everything is ignited because your flame walls everywhere and you're shooting fusillades through them all, right? So these two auto casting feel fantastic with this build. So like I was saying earlier, when I got this gem in here and was able to kind of figure out what felt good in it, that's when the build really felt like it came online in like a real way. So you're going to feel a massive power spike once you actually get to your cast on minion death and get this set up in your Raging Skulls to get it to start proccing off of your Fusillade spawning all your skulls. So we talked about Fusillade, we talked about Flame Wall. Next, two in our list of our rotation is Frostbomb and Solar Orb. So we talked about these when we were like going through the combat a bit, but Frostbomb we're supplementing with Glaciation, which is going to give it more freeze buildup. This is our main method of freezing. So we're trying to like cascade it, and we're trying to get it to hit as big of an area as possible, and then we're getting it to hit multiple times. So it probably is more like this, where we want the increased freeze duration. Then we want it to cascade to where we're getting 3 of them. Then we want it to echo, so those are exploding multiple times. And all these things together give this a ton of freeze potential. And so we're going to get almost all of our freezing from this, from Frostbomb. The main kind of source of freezing that we're getting besides Frostbomb is our automatic comets, which a lot of times will kill stuff before they freeze it, but if anything lives that, it'll be frozen. And then also our ice armor. So anytime we get hit, this is going to proc essentially like an ice wave. So kind of like and it's going to do a knockback as well. So we can just look at ice armor while we're here. This is basically, we're kind of using ice armor to carry some of our other support gems. So it's good by itself with this knockback on hit. Probably look more like this, where right when you socket it, yeah, I think bludgeon is actually, I think this is actually a level 2 support gem. So maybe like this. So you want to If you have the extra spirit, you want to run clarity, you're not going to have this extra spirit until you get a scepter. So don't worry about it if you're not rocking a scepter yet. And then the bludgeon is going to be kind of the big thing that makes Arctic armor feel good, in my opinion, because it's going to do like a kickback along with the freeze when you get hit. And then vitality is just an extra buff that's not really necessary, but useful if you have the extra spirit. So you can easily pull this one if you don't have the spirit to support it. But if you do find yourself with 20 extra spirit, doesn't hurt to have that extra life regen in there, right? So those are our kind of like ice spells. And then looking at our other orb, Solar Orb, we're kind of using Solar Orb on top of our Frost Bomb, like in the middle of our Flame Wall to make that gauntlet, right? And if we look at our Solar Orb gems, we're basically making it so we can have an additional one. So they're not going to last as long, but we can now spawn 2 at a time instead of just 1. We are going to make it so the orb has guaranteed ignite. If something's close to its center, guaranteed ignite here, just based on radius, not on like damage threshold. So you're going to get like basically 100% chance to ignite when something's in the middle of your solar orb. Now anything ignited by this will have a 60% chance to explode on death, and it's going to proc this explosion equal to 10% of the enemy's max life. And so anytime anything's walking through your gauntlet and crosses your solar orb, it now is going to explode on everything else around it for 10% of its max life, which ends up being like big damage sometimes depending on the mob. And then finally, we are complementing this with Font of Mana. And if your mana's good, you don't need this, but if you, especially now that we have Archmage on and we're eating a bunch of mana for that extra lightning damage, this is really good because it literally just makes it so when you're within range of your orb, which happens very often if you're like playing around the little elemental storm gauntlet you've set up, you're getting 40% increased mana regen, and also works for like any of your group members as well. So just like a really good boost, like a big boost to mana when you're around your solar orb to help kind of compensate for all the extra getting pulled from Archmage here. From there, let's go to kind of like the next spell that's kind of like really important in our setup. There's really the 5 spells that really make combat like click. It's Fusillade, Flame Wall, Frost Bomb, Solar Orb, and Lightning Warp. So it's literally Fusillade's our main damage pump. Flame Wall is to shoot Fusillade through. Then we make a gauntlet to kite through with Frost Bomb and Solar Orb. And then we execute everything with Lightning Warp. This is going to make shocked ground for our gauntlet. So the sooner we can get an execute to come through in a fight, we really only need one of these because it's going to make the shocked ground. And then everything else we're like messing everything up with is going to take that increased 25% damage from being shocked, right? So Lightning Warp is our primary source of shock, and mainly because it makes the shocked ground, which is like this 10-second, like more, duration effect that now anything moving through that shocked ground is going to become shocked. So to gem up Lightning Warp, we're doing Unleash. This one just makes it way better. This is what's going to let you like domino it, where when you do one, this is going to make it unleash, and it's going to give you enough damage to get everything around that thing low enough to execute something else, and then you can just go like a chain execute. This one is really good defensively. So Shock Siphon, you'll notice like if you're getting good lightning warps in, you can literally like vamp your energy shield back up because the enemies you're executing are going to be shocked. So you're going to be getting like 40% or 4% every time you do that. And then this is a new one I just put in, a level 3 support gem, but this is basically going to make it so shocks from supported skills do not expire and ignite enemies. So now all the shocks I'm getting from this shocked ground, anytime I execute anything walking through my shocked ground, is now going to be permanently shocked because it's all guaranteed ignited from my Flame Wall Fusillade thing going on, right? So Lightning Warp ends up having some really cool synergy with this build. It ends up basically being our kind of core lightning damage before we turn Archmage online. And the thing we can do before we turn Archmage online is use Mana Tempest to get more lightning damage without the execute. And like I was mentioning, like in the combat section, basically what you can do is you can like cast your Fusillades and then Mana Tempest right after that. And so you'll cast your Fusillades at regular mana. They'll shoot out still with this additional lightning damage on top. And you can kind of use Mana Tempest as like a temporary version of Archmage until we get all the way here and have the spirit and the mana to actually run this. And I don't think we're going to end up wanting to use these two together because it's going to just pull way too much mana in the end, probably. But maybe, you know, if you end up having enough, it could be insanely turbo if they stack. But like right now, I certainly don't have enough mana to do both of them at once. So the other option besides Mana Tempest is Flame Blast here. And this is like another like late game spell, but I was using the critical gems, super critical and inevitable critical, which scales its critical chance and then gives it more critical bonus. But basically, like this one doesn't. It's cool to use. It feels good when you get it to go off, but it doesn't go off enough. I get stunned out of the cast like so often that I'm not that sold on it. There is a gem you could use that would make it a little better. That you could kind of play around with it. It's that like barrier, energy barrier. This one. So this would make it so if you do get stunned out of it, you now are gonna instantly start regenerating your energy barrier. So if you do want to use Flame Blast, I actually recommend like rocking this one first, then Inevitable Critical, then throwing in Super Critical as your third. That's probably going to be the best feeling setup because this is going to kind of protect you from being stunned a bit, and it's going to give you guaranteed energy regen where you could almost like bait getting stunned from this to instantly start your energy shield charge back up because it is so easy to get stunned out of this, right? But this is more of like an end game thing, going to need some more experimentation. Consider that you don't actually need this last slot, so we could actually run a different ring here and be, you know, down a skill slot. And be just fine. And that's a good point to bring up. Before you have these rings, kind of the last two abilities you're going to want to be using are this Blasphemy and then Archmage. So these are like late game, once you have extra spirit, like kind of final spirit buffs to pull online. Because we already have Raging Spirits, we already have Arctic Armor with a few buffs, clarity and stuff, and then we have Cast on Minion Death. And so if you don't have a Scepter at all, once you get to endgame and get all your spirit, you can run all three of these. You can run Raging Spirits, you can run Arctic Armor with clarity, because you're going to get 40 from that last skull instead of 30, so you'll have this extra 10. And then you can run Cast on Minion Death. So of the persistent gems that consume spirit, Raging Spirits is most important, Cast on Minion Death is second most important, and Arctic Armor is like defensive to kind of carry some of our buffs and help us survive a little bit better, but not essential. Your essential is Raging Spirit, and then Cast on Minion Death, and then Arctic Armor to support that. And then once you kind of have all that online, when you have some extra spirit after that, then you're going to look at Blasphemy. And Blasphemy, basically for another extra spirit and another extra skill slot, you're going to put in flammability. But like I was saying earlier, you can hot swap this with Temporal Chains. So use this one as like a defensive once you get it. This is a higher level gem, but once you do get it, you can use this as a defensive curse. You can use this as an offensive curse. And we're eventually going to build up to Whispers of Doom so we can use both of them at the same exact time. So for another 60 spirit, we can run them both simultaneously, but we need to get to this passive in order to be able to apply two curses at once. Otherwise, they're not going to work together. Like one's going to override the other. And we can run all this, guys, like everything up here, we can run without these two rings. So see how these are giving me additional skill slots? Just pretend these bottom two aren't here right now. So pretend like you don't have these rings. This is what you want to be running. This is the setup here, okay? And basically, when you do get an extra ring, that's when you're wanting to slot in Archmage. And if you're wanting to run an additional spell such as Mana Tempest and or Flame Blast, that's when you would want to get another ring. And you basically want to use Mana Tempest like in this skill slot where Blasphemy is, because basically like around the time you're getting Blasphemy, shortly after that you're gonna be able to get Archmage, and that's gonna kind of replace Mana Tempest a bit. But the whole time you're leveling, use Mana Tempest here instead of Blasphemy, basically so you can simulate the added lightning damage from Archmage. And you're doing what we showed where you build your Fusillades, then you cast it. That gives you the bonus damage without eating the mana on that first round of Fusillades, right? Okay, and then finally coming to Archmage, this is like the thing I just got that's kind of bringing the whole thing together. And we're going to really be building into max mana. Like we're going to get as much max mana as humanly possible, probably to continue to try to scale this damage. And like we were talking about, the more max damage we have, the better this percentage of mana is going to feel, because the bigger the mana pool, the more mana per second we're regenerating from our extra regen. So this percentage isn't going to feel as impactful when our regen is high enough to be like instantly replenishing the amount we need to cast like our Fusillade, right? Like if we're regenerating more than 81 mana every 0.22 seconds, there will never be a time where we can't cast this, right? And so that's kind of like what we're building toward, is this, even though it may look like we're sometimes because of how much this is pulling from this percentage, we're never going to be truly because we're going to have such a big mana pool and so much regen that we're going to be able to like ride this into infinity. And that's kind of like, you know, what I've been building toward a bit for like the final version of this. So with that, let's just take a deeper look at the skill tree here. And I've messed with like a good bit of stuff here, but this has felt like really strong since the beginning. And basically, I don't know. I don't really have any like preconceived notions about this skill tree, so I'm kind of coming at this from scratch. The only experience I have with this is over like a decade ago when I was in college. I played Path of Exile when it was in beta, like the original, and I just like made, you know, it was like brand new. No one knew what was going on. I made a shadow and played like a really cool like freeze pulse build I made up to like mid 70s. And so I did, the shadow started here and went this way, and I got like the chaos inoculation. This was up here. There was like another Essence Reaver one where my freeze pulse was vamping energy shield. I wish that one was in here still. But anyways, like I don't, you know, I don't really know. Besides like having looked at the whole thing, I don't know what's meta or what everyone else is doing. I'm just operating based on like numbers and value. So I'm determining how far I can go and what bonuses I'm going to get for going that distance. And this setup, like I've tried to path that way essentially the whole time. And this setup feels so baller. Because of all this extra juice we're getting in the monk tree, specifically these two things: extra lightning damage with chance to shock and extra cold damage with chance to freeze, combined with extra crit, which we need, extra cast speed and mana regen, which we need, extra energy shield, which we need, and more energy shield, recharge, and stun threshold, which we need. So attack and a cast speed here, stats, movement speed, mana regen, literally everything here we need. And it's, look how close it is. Once we get here, huge node 2 points away, huge node 2 points away, huge node 2 points away, another huge node 2 points away, another big 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 node 2 points away. So we're getting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of these big nodes within a one node separation of all of them once we get down to the monk tree, and they're all super valuable for this build. So looking at that off the bat, that's basically what I was building toward at the beginning. So let's just like go through the order here, because you're not gonna like, this is the last thing we're doing. Like I literally just got this level. So the order is like a little important here. So we're gonna start off here, and we're actually gonna start in spell damage. You don't want to switch this over to mana regen until mana regen is a problem. So you start in spell damage, spell damage, spell damage, spell damage. And the reason we're transferring these is because these nodes are not as valuable as the 10%. See how these are 10 and these are 8? So we're going to go ahead, but see how this is a 10 and this is a 10? So we're going to go ahead and take the value of the normal 10% node and skip the 8% spell power instead of the 10% spell power, right? And we need the mana regen once we get here. But to start, go spell power, eventually swap it to mana regen. We come up to here, then we go elemental damage. This is just good, you know, raw power, literally what it is, increased spell damage. Then we go more elemental damage into our fire damage chance to ignite. Then we hit this elemental damage into cold freeze buildup, and this is basically going to give our frost bomb much more of a chance to freeze, and that's going to get complemented again once we get down to Essence of the Mountain. So we do this little, you know, sidetrack to pick up this early elemental damage. Then we are going to go here to cast speed and then follow that through to max energy shield. You're only going to get these two into open mind when you need the mana. So as soon as you're feeling like you need some extra regen as you're leveling, then you go a point here. If you need more than that, go a second point here. So basically wait to build into open mind until you feel like you need the mana regen. As soon as you do, spend your next 2 points in those two slots. You don't need to get this one because you're already pathed through with the cast speed. And then we are going to, these are also much later. So don't get either of these energy barrier ones until you need more survivability. If you're living just fine, if you're not dying at all, you don't need any of this. So stop here at pure energy and start pathing up this way. So we're going to go up. We're going to get a critical hit chance, and we're going to get a critical overload here. And then we're going to path all the way up to this int node. And basically for these nodes you see here, same thing with like what I was talking about with the mana regen. You want to basically just distribute these as you see fit based on the stats you need at the time. It's super easy to change them at the hooded guy to whatever stats you need. So just start with intelligence or whatever one you need at the time, and start making your way over. So we're going to path up here. We're going to go right. And we're going to go right into this spell damage cast speed. This is a huge node. In this whole thing, we're getting 60% spell damage and 5% cast speed. So really big passives there. Then we come down. We're going to hit just the left side of this energy node thing, because this one's Kiss Curse. It reduces our max mana. However, early on, I had this thing filled out. So I think right away, because you're not worried about max mana right away, your mana is going to be just fine, and you're not worried about scaling the max mana for any reason, you want to go first 2 points here, get this 40% increase max energy shield, then make your way around and rock this full circle until you're starting to need max mana, and that's becoming important. Then drop these two out and use them to path further. But basically, I would recommend filling this whole thing out right away, starting with this side, and then eventually, and then work your way over to this one, which is like just really good because it's energy shield, mana regen, and percentage intelligence. This is actually a completely insane node right here. But basically, we want to take this out once we have enough energy shield to survive, so we're not getting that curse of the mana reduction, right? Because of how important that is to mana. And around the same time I did this is around the same time I dropped in a mana blessing here and kind of went the other way on my mana, where I got 10% back and then I got another 5% back plus some max, right? But again, you don't want to work your way up here until you absolutely need the barrier, and then you aren't going to need this mana until, I got this very recently as well. So you're not going to need this until much later. And then you're going to go here and you are going to get this crit early. So we're just going to go all this hit chance. We don't need the damage bonus. We need the hit chance. So you're going to go the long way, get all this chance. And this is going to give you a significant increase to your crit strike chance here. This is what, 55%. Between these four, so really good. And then we're going to come here, then we're going to go right into this juicy elemental node. We're going to just fill this whole damn thing out, baby. So we're going to go here, get the fire node first, here, then get the frost node, then get the lightning node, then get literally all the rest of these, because this is just pure raw damage increase, and this 10% elemental damage is scaling every single thing we do. Everything we do is elemental. It's identical to 10% spell damage. All of our spells are elemental. And then all of these nodes are giving us, we're constantly igniting, we're constantly chilling, and we're constantly shocking. And so we're going to have this 90% bonus online all the time. So this whole chunk, we're getting 70% increase elemental from these little guys. We're getting 90 when all these are online. So we're getting 160% elemental increase from this beautiful elemental shield thing here, like trifecta of elements. So this is like, you're gonna feel a huge power spike once you get this online. So you're kind of like rushing there, right? You're going the path we just showed up to get this stuff, and then you can even skip. Actually, you can even skip the barrier stuff if you don't need it yet, and even the crit stuff, and go straight to this, and then do the crit and the barrier stuff right after that. And then basically once you get your elemental storm is when this is going to come online. So you can just not, you cannot go here yet. So we fill this out, right? Then we're going to come down. So we need 1, 2, 3 points to get down to the monk tree from where we're already at. So like I was saying, it's like, let's see where 3 points could get us in this direction. 1, 2, 3. We're here. Like, what value is here? Like, we're still kind of pretty far away from a lot of the big value out here. And so instead of doing that, we can go 1, 2, 3 this way, and we now have access to all this monk juice. So we're going to first go shock, then we're going to go crit, then we're going to go cast speed all the way through to flow like water. Then we're just going to path through this energy shield because we have to, kind of, to get over to step like mist, but it doesn't hurt. It's an extra almost 50% energy shield through here, even though we're not using the evasion. And then we get Step Like Mist. This is good stats, bonus, move speed, and mana regen. Then we're going to go Essence of the Mountain. And again, we're going to wait to get Mystic Stance until we need it. So Mystic Stance, Rapid Recharge, Dampening Shield. These are ones you're going to be like 1 or 2 points away from. And you want to invest points there as you're getting killed. Like if you feel like your survivability is starting to fall off, or if it is getting low, or if you're dying at all, you want to basically spend your next 2 points to get next 4 points to get these two, and then if you need more, do these two here. But basically, by the time you get to where I'm at, like towards the end of Cruel, you really are going to want all these, because they kind of work together to make a really big difference in how your energy shield feels, where between these nodes, the time it takes for my energy shield to start recharging is halved. So it's going to start in 2 seconds instead of 4. And then I'm going to be getting 210 a second, which is basically, 20%-ish or so. And so it's going to fill up in about 6 seconds. And it's just like, that's going to make a huge difference in how building full barrier feels versus not having those. So basically wait to tap into these guys until you need that survivability. Okay. And then from there, then we're looking at these two ones. So we're going to go projectiles to here, and we're actually going to get psychic fragmentation like much earlier than we get the wild shards. Unless you like have this from another character where you can pass the level 3 support gem, like you're going to get to this part in your skill tree before you get to this gem. So this is basically like doing a similar thing that wild shards is doing. These 3 together are giving us a 20% chance to get 2 extra Fusillades when we cast one. So getting psychic, that's what I would actually do after you do this elemental node. You could even, I think what I did is I actually did this first before I went down to the monk tree, because it was like right here. So almost like up to you if you want to do that. I honestly think the monk tree is better, and then going this later is fine. But basically we're going to do this little branch here where we go and get this 20% additional chance for our Fusillade to fire 2 times, so we don't have to cast as much to get to our full stack of 8. And then we're going to come over here, because now that we have our Elemental Storm online, which is going to hinder, now we are going to basically benefit from that hindering by making it slow more, last longer, and then giving us 30% damage increase against enemies that are hindered. So now anything that walks through a storm, we're going to get 30% increased damage just because it is hindered, right? So now we kind of have this piece covered, and kind of the last stuff to go from here is mana regen. So like I was saying, anywhere along the way when your mana is feeling bad, you want to get these two to open mind, right? But now that we're coming towards endgame, what we want to do is switch these 2 spell damage ones over to increase mana regen, and then we're going to build up to this one right here, which is Arcane Blossom. And we can see this is mana regeneration rate, mana regeneration rate, mana regeneration rate, mana recovery rate. And so this one is actually going to make a big difference in how much these are actually like scaling in total. And I noticed a significant difference from when I had this, didn't have this last level, and then just got it this level. Or I guess that was like the level before, because from there we are going to be pathing up here, and we're going to be getting this Mondo area of effect. So this is actually going to be huge for us, but it's not essential. This is like bonus stuff. So in our next 3 levels, we're going to get these 2 area of effects. Then we're going to get, so this is 16% plus this 30. That's 46% extra area damage on our Frost Bomb, on our Solar Orb, on our Comet, on our Firestorm, on our Mana Tempest, on our Lightning Warp, on our Sigil of Power if we throw it down, on our Flame Wall. Like literally everything we're doing besides our Fusillade is area stuff. So this is gonna make it like way easier to kind of like shoot through and operate around. And I potentially should have gotten this sooner. We'll end up seeing how good it ends up feeling, but the reason I didn't is for the reduced area damage. This is like another kind of Kiss Curse one where you are going to take a slight damage reduction. But now that my damage is way over the top with Archmage on, like I have too much damage, so I can even sacrifice a little bit here in order to get this bigger area of effect. Now all this stuff is going to be 46% bigger, and that's going to result in more damage in the end because it's going to hit more stuff more consistently, and it's going to give us more damage value in total, even with this 10% pulled off the top, right? So we're going to do that, and then kind of future planning from there is we're going to be working our way up here and potentially looking at volcanic skin, definitely looking at Whispers of Doom, because once we have 60 more spirit, we can look to double up on our blasphemy curses. We're going to do that. We're going to get these 2 gem sockets. And another really big one we're looking at is making our way over here. So we're either going to go this way or we're going to go this way from Whispers of Doom, probably this way. There's big barrier and interior if we want it, and there's big crit here as well. But what we're really after is arcane intensity, and we're gonna want to get ether flow because of how much we're constantly moving. This is actually going to be a really big value node for us. This one is interesting, and I'm gonna have to see how this feels because we do want the max mana, but I'm not sure how the increased mana cost of skills is going to feel. But both of these we kind of want to lead into arcane intensity because of the fact that we're building max mana. Like this is already going to give us, like right now, this is giving me 30% increased spell damage, and it's like infinitely scaling, right? So the more I build my max mana, the higher this is going to get. So you know, kind of like this crit thing, this barrier with this int if we need it, and this arcane intensity, as well as this fire node over here that's a little less kind of priority. These are the things I'm looking at to go towards next, now that we've kind of covered our bases with this really strong, just full damage energy barrier crit elemental base here. And then we're going to work our way up to improve our blasphemy, get some sockets, and then, you know, get some infinitely scaling spell damage off our mana, and look to some of these bigger, you know, potentially crit and damage nodes up here. But you have to invest significant points to get here. So it's felt really good using those points for all this immediate power in the monk tree. And then, you know, kind of working our way up there after. Like I've felt no sort of lack of power doing this pathing the whole time. And then for our Ascendancy tree, we're just going to go immediately into Elemental Storm and then into Rain Dancer after that. And then from here, like when I get 6 and 7, we're going to go into Arcane Surge. Oh, and the other thing you can do if you want, I actually did this. I started Arcane Surge, and then I ended up, once I got more crit chance, then I pulled it and went to Rain Dancer. But you could actually do, you know, Tempest Caller and Constant Gale at first, which I think is actually better. And then once your crit damage is high enough, you want to pull the Gale out and go Rain Dancer. And then when we get 5 and 6, we're going to go Surge back. And then when we get 6 and 7, now our Surge is going to increase its effect by 1% every 15 max mana we have, which is just an insane amount. Like, I have so many 15 max manas. So that's going to be a lot of percentages that this Arcane Surge buff is increased. And this gives us cast speed and mana regeneration. So every one of these percentages is going to give us another % of cast speed and another % of mana regen. And this is the node that's going to let us go full ultra turbo with Archmage online. And so like once we get our 8th ascendancy point, we're going to be absolutely turbo stomping because we're going to really benefit from the cast speed, and we're going to really benefit from the mana regen. And that's a situation where maybe now we look to use Mana Tempest combined with Archmage, because we're actually going to have so much extra mana regen from this infinitely scaling off our max mana, right? So I'm like super excited to get to that point on this character and see what that feels like. So I'm going to be just like kind of like slow grinding this like I have in the mornings and stuff, and I will hopefully be able to bring you guys that endgame version of this build fairly soon here, because that's what I'm going to be working on in the immediate future. So that's basically the skill tree setup. I hope that makes sense. You don't have to worry about your weapon sets at all, because we're just doing the weapon swap for the staff, and that's not even necessary. You don't even have to do that. Only if you want Sigil of Power, you can weapon swap a staff. Don't even have to worry about the split yet or doing anything fancy. And so yeah, here is the skill tree setup. And very last thing here, we're going to go through gear, and then I'm just going to show the whole setup all together for reference and timestamp it. So anyone that wants to just see the whole thing, everything together, can like go to the very end and just get it all in one chunk, right? So just looking at our gear, I'm just going to like show you guys the gear, but kind of talk through what we're looking for. So like my gear's not that turbo, my scepter's pretty good, but all this is just self-crafted gear that I've found along the way. It's nowhere near perfect. You don't need insane gear for this build to pump. When we do get insane gear, the build is going to absolutely pump. And so what we're looking for on our wand, I think the best like wand inherent effect is this Volatile Dead, but you could literally do any of them because I don't even end up casting that hardly at all. But if you do like that spell, it does synergize good to this build because it makes a fireball. Just elemental damage and like synergizes with everything we're doing. But the main thing you're looking for on a wand is percent damage of something. Either gain percent damage of extra lightning, gain percent damage of extra fire, or gain percent damage of extra frost. Any of those three elemental ones, gain percent extra damage is going to give you really big value on your DPS increase. You'll notice like pulling that on and off when you have, you know, like your Fusillade. Obviously this is giving a spell level too, but just a huge DPS jump, you know, like 2,800 to almost 1,000 up from that, from one spell level rank. And the extra lightning damage, we can even see it getting broken down in here, you know, the lightning damage. And you can see Archmage, the value here. Look at the DPS when I toggle Archmage. 1,000 DPS from Archmage, bro, because of that lightning damage boost. So this is the power of attacks gaining damage as extra elemental damage. So we're trying to replicate that effect, not only in our skill tree, going and getting Essence of the Storm and Essence of the Mountain, but also in our gear, building it in our weapon when we can, right? So look for that. The other thing you really want to look for that's important is extra spell ranks. So either to fire skills, a better version is to all skills, and like that's a huge, those two things are huge DPS increases. So anytime you can get extra skill ranks, anytime you can get percent damage as extra elemental damage, and that's different from something like this 72% increased spell damage, right? Those are different. Like, so you don't want, you're not looking for like percentage increased fire damage. You're looking for gain percentage of damage as extra fire damage. This verbiage, gain percentage damage as extra damage, not spell damage is increased or fire damage is increased or lightning damage is increased, right? Hope that makes sense. So all the normal stuff we're building in our skill tree, so like mana regen, barrier, critical strike chance, like all that stuff is going to be good on our gear. So anywhere you can get mana regen is good. And then you want to look for, you know, stats basically to give you enough to work your gem. So this is a good example, like my necklace. I was wearing this necklace to get enough attributes to use the gems I needed. And we can see now my attributes are way over, so I no longer need this necklace. So I can easily now swap this necklace out for something better, because we can see I have 8 slots for my strength and 9 slots for my dex, and it's kind of way more than I needed. But when I was leveling up, I needed this to be able to run these different gems I was looking for, right? So basically use attributes on gear to like cover your bases to run the gems you need. And then eventually you'll be able to, you know, like pull that. Okay, so see, I need this for the, but basically what I could do is if I take this off and I need this bit of extra strength for these things or the extra dex for this, now I can just go into my passive tree and switch some int over and try to get them that way, right? But I'll basically be looking to try to pull this amulet off soon and run with a better amulet, because I'm mainly using it as a stat stick to be able to run all my gems and my gear, right? We can see this needs some strength, this needs some dex. I'm getting that from this neck right now. So that's another way to kind of use gear. And then for all your armor, you're just going to want to go full energy shield. And that's going to synergize really well with the energy shield stuff we're doing. You want to wait until you find, this is a bad example, and I only did this because it had spirit on it and I knew I was going to use it for a while. But for something like this, if you find a piece of gear with a good roll to plus energy shield or increase to energy shield, that's the time where you want to socket it and throw in an iron rune, because the more those percentages are increasing the value, like the further that's going to go, right? So basically, if you have a big increases to energy shield on a piece, you want to actually try to socket it, throw in an iron rune, and that's going to give you even more value out of the energy shield. And even though this doesn't have a huge increased energy shield, it has this little 23%. I did that anyways on here because I needed the extra survivability, and I was going to be using this for a while because it has the spirit on it. So this is like a recent upgrade to my chest piece that I made. And when you get to endgame, you want to start looking for spirit on stuff. You don't need this initially, but you're going to be able to cover like all your spirit initially from a scepter. So the main thing you're looking out for like the whole time is scepter with good increased spirit. And it needs malice. It doesn't need malice. You want malice on it. So look for even like white scepters with malice, grab them and use your augmented orbs to try to get increased spirit. Like literally loot every one of the scepters you find that's white, even normal with malice or blue, and then use these to turn it from a normal item into a magic item, see if you can get a spirit roll, and then see if you can get a spirit roll by augmenting it with another magic modifier, and basically just like try to craft a big spirit scepter. Either look for a scepter with good spirit roll, or any white scepter you get, just use these. And once you get a good spirit rolls to come through on the magic modifiers, then you use a regal orb to take it to rare, and then you can throw a couple exalteds on there like I did here, to where you build it out into like a full item. But like this came as a blue scepter with just that top tier 2 roll, just the 17% increased spirit and 23 max mana. That's how I found it. Then I did a one of these augmentation rolls and got this second spirit roll, this tier 3 spirit roll for the 38%. Now it was at 55% spirit. I'm like, oh damn. So then I dropped the regal orb on it, upgraded it, and then dropped 2 exalted. So now it's got 6 mods. And then with scepters, if you increase the quality, it scales the spirit. So basically, as I needed more spirit, I used more Arcanist Essers. And just recently, when we went up to Archmage is when I got it to 20%. But you can basically continuously scale your spirit up by using this Arcanist Etcher to scale the quality of your scepter. And you really only want to do that once you find a good scepter with a good increase, so that quality helps scale the increase as well, right? Okay, so then for our rings, we're basically just looking for like juicy caster stats on rings, and eventually we want to look for, when you're getting like above level 40, you want to start looking for these unset rings, and which is just like the hole on them, and these are what's going to give you the additional skill slots. And you can get away with just one of these, because like we were looking at our skill tree, like if we're not running Flame Blast or Mana Tempest, we can actually get away with just one. In the final setup, I probably will end up taking one away like this and running like cast speed or something here. But basically just start looking for unset rings and use them accordingly as you expand. And basically the first ring is going to let you add in Blasphemy. The second ring is going to let you add in Archmage, unless you want to drop something. So like if you drop your Mana Tempest or your Flame Blast, like these optional ones we were talking about, then you can get away with just one ring. And you can even like do this where like you can run Blasphemy first, and then you can run Archmage with the second ring type of deal. But just keep your eye out for some unset rings, because we're going to want to expand at least by 1 spell slot, if not 2. The second one's kind of up in the air, whether we're going to need it or not, and whether you're wanting to run the Mana Tempest or the Flame Blast in this final version, right? And then I was experimenting with some evasion here. I think you want to just go full energy shield based on kind of what I've been testing. And we would need to go everything split if we wanted to go in evasion. Like doing just a couple pieces of evasion, I don't feel like it's going to be enough to give us the evasion we need for it to be valuable. So rather than do that, we're just going to go full barrier and go all in on the stuff to help it regen faster, and just play completely around our barrier to the point where we might even do what I did 10 years ago on my shadow and eventually build into full chaos immunity, but take our max life to 1. And this becomes possible when you have a mega barrier. So that might be like a level super end game look, like a level 100 type thing. With belt, just look for good caster stats. With boots, the main thing you want on boots is movement speed. So keep an eye out for boots with move speed. And if you have a piece like these boots where it's an energy shield piece, but there's no bonuses to energy shield or anything like that, then you might look at socketing in something like mana regen. These inspiration ones are a little more rare, so I would save your inspiration ones till you have more of an end game piece like this that you're like attached to. Like this is good. It's 25% move speed, big max mana, 20 intelligence, big stun threshold, Max life doesn't hurt. So even though there's not extra barrier on it, which I would be the ideal, I still really like it. So I dropped an inspiration rune in here, and this is just going to help our mana regen a little bit. So basically, on pieces that don't have big energy increases that you want to scale with a rune, you can look to socket in mana regen, and we might end up transitioning more over to that as we need it here in endgame with Archmage Online. Yeah, so that's basically the gear, and then we have literally any staff with Sigil of Power to staff swap, or you can run Dusk Vigil. I just tried to corrupt this one in that instance we were in, and it just re-rolled everything a little worse. I didn't know what corrupting did on a legendary, so now we know. I wonder if it can do anything else. But basically, you can run, either a Sigil of Power staff or like a Fusillade staff here, a Dusk Vigil, if you want to. This is basically going to take away a lot of your spirit stuff because you don't have the scepter anymore, but it's going to give you the doubling up on the Fusillades you're casting, which is kind of cool. So basically, do what you're feeling with the offhand, either Dusk Vigil or a Sigil of Power weapon swap with the staff like we were talking about. And then, just as big of mana and life flasks as you can get. And then I really like the stun charm. Like, I think we get the most value out of the stun charm, like in general. So I would kind of keep that one on. And then any ailments you're like annoyed with, like try to find a good one of those and like carry it with you, or like have it ready in your stash to like portal, grab it and fill at the well and go back in. And then if you do get a second slot, you can like run both of them. But like I usually have the charm one on and carry a freeze one around. Because freeze is like the main sort of ailment that kills me, it seems like most of the time. And then I have this one that I found that's the only one I found like this so far, this golden charm that literally just gives like rarity increase on rare drops when you kill stuff. So that's the gear setup. But in general, yeah, you're basically looking for all the juicy mage stuff. You're looking for extra damage as elemental damage. You're looking for spell damage. You're looking for spell ranks. You're looking for any attributes you need. You're looking for big energy barrier on your armor. You're looking for max mana wherever you can get it. Max mana is another really big stat that you care about because of all the stuff we're doing with max mana and how all that's scaling, right? And all the infinite scaling stuff we're doing in our skill tree between the force of will and this guy up here, arcane intensity, and the way the mana regen works with the mechanic, like having a bigger max mana pool makes your mana regen go further, right? So, really looking for max mana, mana regeneration, all these things that we're kind of building around in our skill tree. Those are the things we're looking to kind of like amplify on our gear, right? Hope that makes sense. All right, so at the very end here, I'm going to show you the full setup all at once, kind of like a snapshot of the full build. So if you want to reference it or like look at exactly what's where at any point, you can just come to this section, find exactly what you're looking for. I'm going to just mouse over everything in my skills and then show my order in the skill tree. And so this is just like the reference section. So with that, our first and most important spell is Ember Fusillade. That's going to be gemmed with Arcane Tempo, Mana Flare, and Wild Shards. Our next most important spell is going to be Flame Wall. That's going to be gemmed with Magnified Effect, Fortress, and Arcane Surge. Those are going to both be really enable Raging Spirits, which is our first spirit gem we're going to be taking. This is going to really come online once we get this Infernal Legion support gem combined with Minion Instability, because this is what's going to make them combust and what really turns online our cast on Minion Death meta gem later. But basically early on, you're going to want this anyways, because they're going to be constantly spawning off of our Fusillade. So that's our first spirit gem we're taking. Then we're going to be getting our solar orb, and our solar orb is going to be gemmed with overabundance to give us an extra fiery death and then font of mana. And if you don't need the mana, you can switch this for a DPS look instead. And then our next spirit buff we're going to be taking is Arctic Armor. And as we have additional spirit, we want to supplement that with Clarity. And then if we have even more extra spirit, we want to supplement that with Vitality. If you're short on spirit, pull Vitality. If you're still short on spirit, pull Clarity. But you really want to try to run Clarity. Vitality is not quite as important. But if you do have the extra 20, put it in. And the other one we're running here that makes it a lot better is Bludgeon. So every time this procs its wave, it's not only going to freeze with or chill with the freeze chance, it's going to also knock back, right? And then the next kind of big spell in our rotation is Lightning Warp, and this is the one with the Execute that we're going to use to get our shock to ground. This is our main source of shock. We're going to be gemming Unleash, Shock Siphon, and Stormfire into here. And then from there, we are looking at... So for another spell to use the whole way up, guys, while you're leveling, Mana Tempest is like sort of a temporary spell you can use in and out, and it's going to simulate what we're eventually going to be able to do for Archmage, where it's going to eat more mana to add lightning damage to all of our stuff. And this is especially good because our only source of main lightning damage is our shock to ground from our warp. So using Mana Tempest will basically give your Fusillades lightning damage and also just really juice them up. And we can do what I was showing where you cast your Fusillades before you spawn your Mana Tempest, then you spawn your Tempest and let them shoot out of it, and you'll get the bonus damage without using the extra mana. So Tempest is one that you can sort of use situationally, and I didn't sort of figure this out towards the end here. So I wasn't using this a ton leveling up, but I think it would be super good actually leveling up once you have access to it. And then from there, we're looking at the rest of our spirit gems. So as we're coming into endgame, we're looking to build a huge spirit through our scepter and malice, and we're looking to take advantage of that with these spirit gems. So the first one's going to be this cast on minion death. We're going to socket that with Comet and Firestorm. If you want more Comets, only do Comet. If you want more Firestorms, only do Firestorm. I think they both feel really good together, and having them both together, they proc about like once a pack. Like every pack I'm fighting, each one procs about once, which feels kind of like the perfect amount of time, and they actually feel really good together. And this is completely enabled by the way our skulls are constantly blowing themselves up with Infernal Legion and minion instability. So without spawning Raging Spirits from constant Fusillades, this isn't going to work. So cast on minion death is fully enabled by these two support gems supporting your Raging Spirit. So make sure you have these two socketed, and this is going to just make this do more damage. This is not as important. It's going to make these two things do more damage because it's scaling your minions max life. But this is going to ignite your minions so they burn down, and after 5 seconds they're going to die. This is going to make them explode when they die. So this ignites everything around them. This makes them explode for fire damage, and then every time that happens, you get energy toward cast on minion death, which ends up happening a lot. So then from there, the next spirit gem, once we have enough, we're going to look to socket Blasphemy and use a constant flammability curse with it. We want to use flammability as our offensive curse. Once we get temporal chains, we want to carry this with us and hot swap it if we need a defensive curse. So this is the curse we need for survivability. This is the curse we use for more damage. Eventually, we're going to use both together once we work our way up to Whispers of Doom in the skill tree. But for right now, kind of like swap them based on what you need. But every additional one of those is going to cost an extra 60 spirit to slot in, right? We can see it disables my Archmage when I put it in there. So the final spirit gem that we've been working toward this whole time that I just unlocked like a level or two ago is Archmage. And I have that supported just with Lightning Mastery right now, just the very first level 3 gem that I got when I had it slotted in. But that's just going to give it an extra level for free, basically. But basically, this is going to be our huge mana consumption one, and this is 100 spirits. So this is like endgame spirit buff that we're only going to get to once we have big spirit scaling. So I have all the spirit from the quest combined with 186 from my scepter and 37 for my chest piece, right? So that's how I have enough to run a Blasphemy curse, 100 from Archmage, 30 for Raging Spirits, 60 for Arctic Armor because I got these buffs in there, and another 60 for cast on minion death, right? So we're literally running, what, 310 spirit worth of buffs here. So that's basically like the full lineup. Then we have these supplemental ones at the top coming from our items, right? So we have Volatile Dead. We can cast off our wand. You can literally have any wand effect here that you like, or just a wand with good stats and not even use it, which is kind of what I end up doing. You do want to find a scepter with Malice, because this is going to give you the extra crit you need to proc your Elemental Storm. And you can just throw Persistence on there to give that crit duration debuff extra time. And then you want to just have a weapon swap staff. If you're not running the Dusk of Vigil offhand, just grab any staff with Sigil of Power. And so you can line up you can do the weapon swap to cast your Sigil of Power, and then instantly swap back to your wand and cast everything out of it like we talked about. And in order to do that, you want to make sure everything you're casting is set to just the weapon set, not your staff. So like, see all my staffs on weapon slot 1? I have all my spells that I'm casting unchecked, so that the only thing that uses my staff is Sigil of Power. Everything else I try to cast after that auto swaps back to my wand, right? So that's how you like easy weapon swap Sigil of Power without having to worry about weapon swapping. It just does it automatically. When you press Sigil of Power, it pulls your staff out. When you press anything else, it pulls your wand out. And then the very last thing we have on here is Elemental Storm, and this is coming from our Ascendancy tree, the second point, and this is, this guy here, right here. And so that's going to now show up in our skill tree, and we're going to gem this baby with increased cooldown recovery rate, which combined with this is going to give it 180% more cooldown reduction on its normal effects. We're going to get a bunch of them happening all the time. We're going to give it a chance to blind, so anything that moves through these is not only going to get hindered, it's also going to get blinded, less chance to hit us. And then we are also using this elemental discharge with it, and it seems like this is doing crazy stuff for the storm damage, but needs further testing. So yeah, that is the skill setup. Now that we're in the skill tree, here is the skill tree setup. Here's the overview, and I'm going to just quickly walk you through the pathing here. So for our Ascendancy, we're actually going to go Elemental Storm and Arcane Surge first. So you're going to have both of these two. Once you have enough crit chance, you want to pull Arcane Surge and go Rain Dancer. So you're getting even more storms, but do that a little later once your crit chance is like a little higher, once you've gotten kind of further into your skill tree. And then for our 5th and 6th points, we're going to get Arcane Surge back. And our 7th and 8th points, we're going to go Force of Will. And this is going to do crazy value with the max mana scaling that we're already doing, right? So in the skill tree here, starting off, we're going to go up here. We're going to go spell damage first. You only want to switch this to mana regen when you get to where I'm at in the game and you activate Archmage and like really need it. Or I did this about 10 levels ago. So when you get to like 50 range and you're needing more mana regen, move these two 8%ers out over here, but start with the full spell damage. We're going to go up here, get this elemental damage here. Then we're going to go over the top, cast speed to here. We are going to wait. Don't go up here yet until you need more defensives. If you're dying, go up here right away and start building more energy barrier on your gear. But if your survivability is fine, stop at pure energy, okay? You also don't need these two yet. Don't get these two until you need more mana regen. Just path across here, stop at pure energy, go up here through this crit, go to here, go over to the right. You don't need this yet. This was the last point I just got. This is endgame mana regen you need here. Don't need it yet. Go right, go get this cast speed and spell damage. Go down here. I would actually just go these three. I would go these four first. Then I would make my way over, get all of this, all freaking every node in here. Pathing doesn't matter. It's all good. This is 160% elemental damage increase here. Then get this crit after that. Then get this extra projectile here. Then go down to the monk, 3 extra points here. Go first for lightning damage, then for skill speed through, then through this evasion, then essence of the mountain, then get this extra crit, then only get this when you need more survivability, when you need more barrier stuff. Get this after you've gotten these two. So when you first start like dying or needing barrier stuff, get dampening first, and then get rapid recharge, and then finally get mystic stance. But once you do get these three, if you're struggling surviving, these three together feel really good in the amount of increased recharge and extra energy shield you're getting. You don't need this max mana until much later. Don't worry about getting this until you're like around where I'm at now. But yeah, basically after you get this monk's tree stuff, then that's what you're looking for. You're making sure you swap these to mana regen, you get these 2 extra mana regens here. You're going to go 1 point over up here and get mana blessing. Oh, before you do all this, you can grab these 3. This is going to add the extra hinder damage to our elemental storm, which hinders when stuff walks through it. So you can also snag this stuff before you start doing this mana scaling. But once you kind of got, this chunk covered, you want to start scaling the mana. So you're going to probably get this a little sooner. Get this as like the first bit of extra mana regen you need as you're leveling at any point. But then from there, get the barrier stuff dialed in, then get this extra mana blessing here. And then we're going to work our way up here and get Arcane Blossom. And that's going to do a huge amount for our mana, it feels like, especially with Archmage Online. And then from there, I'm working my way up here to get Royal. And then from there, I'm going to go up here. I'm going to look at this socket into Whispers of Doom and look for enough spirit to socket in a second curse, like we were just talking about. And then I probably am going to look from there to be coming over into this mana regen and arcane intensity for the big mana scaling we're talking about, and possibly look at this second jewel socket if I have a jewel that's worth it. But you really want a good jewel before you go out of your way to get a jewel socket. So we're probably going to end up going up over Whispers of Doom, and then over, there's big int here if we need it, there's big crit here that we're going to eventually get, there's big energy barrier here that we're probably going to eventually get, but what we're really after is the mana regen. This one's the best one here because we're always moving, so this is going to be a big 50% we can pick up here, but this arcane intensity is going to do huge amounts for the like infinite mana scaling we're doing with this, and with the 8th point in Force of Will that we're going to eventually get, right? So those are the gems all together. That is the skill tree. And I'll just like mouse over my gear real quick, but we already talked about what you need on gear. The main thing is big scepter with big spirit increase. And then when you're getting to like this point of the game, look for some unset rings for the extra skill slots. You really only need one. The second one's like if you want to mess around with extra stuff. And then move speed on boots. And then extra damage as lightning, or gain extra damage as lightning, gain extra damage as cold, or gain extra damage as fire, and +2 spell skill ranks on weapon is what you're looking for. Am I missing anything? I think that's basically it, guys. So like, here's like an overview of my stats real quick, so you can kind of just see everything together. For like the quest choices in game, you want to basically always go for like mana regen. If there's ever anything like mana regen related, you kind of want to go for that, it seems like, for the most part, because we're just going to need so much mana in the end that anything we can get to contribute there is going to help a lot, right? Boom! So that is it for this one. Really want to just thank you for watching, especially if you made it this deep in. Really would love to hear what you think about the build, especially if you end up like trying it at all in the comments. But even if you just have any like questions or thoughts or ideas of way it could get better, or like why I'm doing this, or maybe about this, like please leave that stuff in the comments, and I will try to get to like read all that and ingest it and absorb it and kind of use it moving into endgame here. And I will be, especially if people like this video, I will be looking to do an endgame video for this same exact build when I have pushed deeper into endgame and am running it in like deeper maps and stuff. But I also have every other class started, and I've used almost every ability or spell and weapon in the game at this point. I love like theory crafting and like messing with this stuff. So I'm also going to be, if people are liking the videos, I'm going to be potentially looking at builds for other classes and all kinds of stuff. This is kind of like my dream game. I really love like theory crafting builds, and I felt sort of like bottlenecked in that capacity trying to do it in like a game like Diablo 4 or like World of Warcraft, which isn't even really like an action RPG, but still has like builds related, right? And so the amount of this game that I played over winter break like has let me see enough that I'm like it's this, like this is it. And so I'm going to be probably pretty deep into this for a while. So hopefully looking to do many more cool builds in the future. But again, just want to thank you so much for watching. Remember to take care of yourself and have fun out there blasting in Ray class. We will catch you in the next one. Peace.